everybody, I'm Jen,
And I'm Tammy.
and they call us Woo.
Hey, everybody. This episode is a two-part episode. If you did not hear the beginning of this, go back and listen to last week. Or if you don't want to listen to it, you don't need to. You can just listen to this one, but it might not make complete sense. So, if you have not listened to last week, go back and listen to that and then finish with this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can sound harsh when you're coming from a place that you're feeling like you're scared to look at these things or whatever, but really it is the most loving thing that you can do for yourself. Um because like to your point, you can't fix the leaky pipe if you just keep pretending it's not there. You can't really love yourself to the extent that you need to be loved and accept yourself to the extent that you need to be accepted, because all these things that make you feel bad are something you believe about yourself. So
Well,
if you
and
aren't able to process and give yourself the perfect type of love that we can all give ourselves if we really try, to look at these things, then you're going to believe all these lies. It's not helpful.
this is a really good kind of transition to say, like, there's you can be loving to yourself as yourself, and you can be loving to yourself as you see other people, right? Because what I've come to realize, I guess, is like we're all one in this thing. I'm seeing my beliefs played out through you two. You guys are showing me, reflecting back to me what I believe. I'm doing the same to you all the time. And I think it was uh, I've heard Jordan Peterson use this reference that for little kids and for old people, you should never do for them something that they can do for themselves. And it's really interesting to consider that you're not helping someone by creating a situation where they avoid the responsibility of taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That the most loving thing you can do is let them deal with whatever they're dealing with. For example, if you have a baby and you want your baby to walk, if every time the baby goes to stand up, you pick up the baby and carry it around, the baby's never going to learn how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to go out on its own to do these things. And its development will suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's my belief that it's the same with triggers. If you don't let people experience the triggers that they have, you are stunting their growth,
Mm-hmm.
and you're preventing them from growing. And then the question is well, why? Why are we scared to trigger someone? Is it because we think we're uncomfortable, or we're going to be uncomfortable seeing someone else that's uncomfortable? Is it because we think we are responsible for what someone else feels and thinks?
Mhm.
I can't control what you think. I can't control what you feel. It's
Mm-hmm.
not my responsibility. But it is my responsibility to act in a way that I believe is loving
Mm-hmm.
to people. And part of that is the responsibility that I have of doing what I feel is right, even if it means someone else has to has to take a look at some of their own stuff and how it affects them. Because I know as a parent, like, the more I don't allow my kids to develop and make decisions on their own, the less I am preparing them for life.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point they're out the door and they're going to be on their own. Maybe they'll call me, maybe they won't. I hope they do. If not, I'll call them. But at the end of the day, it's like, in order to prepare my kids for life, I have to let them experience things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we censor ourselves because we're worried about what someone else is going to think or say, we're doing the exact opposite. Like the exact opposite. We're
Yeah.
not we're
Yeah.
not helping them. We're not preparing them for life, and we're not even respecting them enough to think that they can handle the truth.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it's like the difference between love and codependence, right? Like real love, you want that person to be okay regardless of if you're there or not. Like I talk about this with my husband sometimes because I'm a much different relationship. We have a much different relationship than he has had in the past. And I came into it very independent with very different views than some of the people he had been with in the past. And I remember having this conversation about he used to be so afraid if I ever talked about a time when I wasn't going to be here that I would, that I would die. I would move on to something else. And he hated having those conversations because he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, honey, I want you to be good no matter if I'm here or not. Like, that's what love feels like to me. Just like, if you were gone, would you want me to sit there and cry about you the rest of my life? And he goes, well, no. And I said, exactly. That's what love feels like, right? You want that person to be okay, whether it's your child or whatever, but also yourself and all of these other things where you're just like, that's codependence might feel safe, but that's not love. Codependence is a false sense of safety. I had a conversation with my daughter about this the other day where we were talking about some deeper subjects of some patterns of behavior that she didn't like. And I knew she didn't like it because she started talking to me and she immediately told me before she told me the decision she had made, well, it was kind of a dumb choice, but like she was already telling me before she even said it that she didn't like the decision she made. And so we were talking about it a little deeper. I'm like, so why do you think you made that decision? And she's like, well, I think it's because it felt safe. And I'm like, but did it though? Did that actually feel safe? Do you feel safe right now? And she's like, well, I don't know. And so I had her think about like, what would the opposite be? Like if you had made a different choice, does that feel better when you, like if you're sitting in it and thinking about this is the choice I made instead, does that feel happy? Do you feel happier with that? And yeah, I guess I do. I'm like, so were you actually safe when you made that? No, I don't think I was, So it's like, it's a whole different mind, like trippy mindset, right? Because like we think that
Yeah.
these safe things feel loving, but it's not real love.
And,
It's like, it's hurting. It's hurting us. And
yeah,
it's,
that is such a great point to make. It reminds me. So I was at a a grocery store chain that sells other things. I won't mention anything here, but where it was. But I was at the checkout, and I was in line patiently waiting. They were checking out the person in front of me and rang them up. And at the end, the the uh, the lady working the register was super bubbly, super happy, and I was like, oh, this is like pretty great. And at the end of that interaction with her and the other customer, she says, "Be safe." And I was like, huh, why do we always say that? So after she rang up my stuff and I paid and she says, "Be safe." And my response was, if you could choose one, would you choose to be safe or would you choose to be free? And she goes, oh, I'd want to be mm, I think I'd want to be free. And it's a really interesting consideration, right? Because you could say that that someone in a 6 by 6 cell is extremely safe, but they have zero freedom. That you're trapped in a prison, and I think that's kind of where really kind of where we're almost at in society, is that in some ways we've been trained to keep ourselves in our own little prisons, a prison where we don't speak our truth, where we don't want to be authentic, where we're worried that we're going to offend someone.
mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't want to play that game. I want to be myself. Like, I want to be free. I don't want to. If freedom comes at the risk of losing some safety, man, I'll take freedom any day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who wouldn't? Like, we all love America, right? I mean, we love the freedom that we have, and it's interesting that when you consider it, it's like, are you really free if you're censoring yourself around other people?
I think it's interesting that you just said um we're so afraid of offending someone. And so we're keeping ourselves in these cells. Um, and really, if you think about it in the context of what we've been talking about today, are we offending other people or are we offending our own selves, like our own beliefs? Like we're so afraid of offending somebody because we're afraid we're going to trigger ourselves in the beliefs that we have and force ourselves to look at everything that's within us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was an interesting point
We're,
for you
we're
to say.
yeah, we're triggered at the idea of triggering someone, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
and it is an interesting point that you make about being worried about offending people too, because I think even that has become a very false statement for a lot of people to make sometimes because you talk to anyone and they're always going to say like having a voice to speak is important, having freedom of speech is important, but some of these talking heads that talk about oh, we shouldn't be so worried about offending people aren't always coming from the place that you're coming from of love and honesty. Sometimes they aren't being honest with themselves either, and they are saying these things for reaction. They're saying these things for views, and they might not actually even believe it either. So if we're coming from a place of healed, we're working on healing ourselves, and we're coming from a place of love, we should never be concerned about the things that we're saying offending people, to your point, because our intention is not to harm the person. Our intention is to show love to everybody and allow them to experience whatever they need to experience from it. And I think that's the part where people get confused sometimes, because we have now this younger generation that's really confused because they obviously don't want to harm people. They don't want people to feel upset. They don't want people to, they don't want to make someone feel terrible. But the counterpoint to some of that sometimes is these people are also being very dishonest about how they actually view this freedom of speech, because these might be people who are saying like, we shouldn't be so worried about being offensive, and then they're immediately saying something that they, if you really look at it, they don't always really believe either, because they're saying everything they can think to say to with the intention of getting attention versus being real about like, we should be able to say what we want to say and not worry about offending people, because that's the loving thing to do, not because this is going to get me so many views and all these other people are saying it, so I'm going to say it too. So if we can get back to a place of honesty where now some of these younger people are seeing like there's a difference between someone who is saying like, it's not my responsibility, like what you were saying, it's not my responsibility how you feel about what I say, but I'm going to say this to you from a loving space, versus what feels very polarizing right now. It's like you almost have to pick a side, right? Like you have to pick a side about your political views, or you have to pick a side about your religious views, or you have to pick a side about all this. And if there's like, if these people are saying, but let's just take like Joe Rogan, for instance, right? He can be a very polarizing talking head. Some people love him, some people don't. But he talks about interesting things. And if we're really being open and honest about everything that he talks about, you don't have to agree with everything he says, but you can appreciate the fact that he is willing to talk about a lot of different things and allow people to speak on that. Well, if you would talk to me about many different views I had, you'd probably be like, really? She thinks Joe Rogan's okay, right? But the reality is, it's not just Joe Rogan. It's across the board. Everybody should be allowed to say the things they need to say. We can decide what we want to think about them. But if you're coming from a place of honesty and love, you don't have to pick a side. You don't have to. Believing this doesn't mean that you also believe in things that are harmful to people. Like it doesn't have to be that way. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to make choices. If I don't pay attention to everything I say because I'm worried about offending someone, well, then people are going to make judgments about me and all these other beliefs I have. And that's not true. It's you be someone who loves and supports everybody. You can somewhat be someone who doesn't have the same, political, religious, whatever views as this particular person who's, maybe seem a little more harsh sometimes, and still love and respect the fact that everybody's got something to say. And if you're able to heal yourself, you're able to better recognize where that person is coming from. You're able to better recognize, like, oh, this was a trigger, but it didn't come from an unloving place, because I know that this is part of what I need to work on, or I know that I love myself enough to work on this, or whatever. Because I see that with my daughter. We have lots of conversations about all types of things, from sexuality to politics, all these things. And I always try to bring her back to balance. I'm like, we are suffering from a lack of balance right now. I think that is the real piece of it, where it's like, you don't want to be so far into these talking points that you forget to balance things back out again, that you forget that intention is important. Intention of how you view yourself and how you view other people is important. Honesty is important. If you are a person who loves someone of your same gender, there's nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful. If you are a person who is pretending to love someone of your same gender because you think that's something that's going to get you attention, or you think that's something that's going to make you feel like you're more important, or whatever little things that might come up about that, that is being not only dishonest to yourself, that's being harmful towards the people who really do feel that way. You're taking away the things that they need in order to be happy and successful in their relationships, because you're making it about something that's not truthful. And it was interesting to talk to her about those things, because there is a viewpoint that she just never quite thought of before, right? Because it's like, if I'm open and accepting, I have to believe all these things. I can't look at it from a critical perspective and try to reason through things. And I think that overall, these conversations we've had has made her a much more well-rounded person. Like, the people she identifies as people she wants to connect with are people who really truly are people who see her and they engage with her, and she's able to self-reflect. If we're like, hey, how, you're having this problem, how do you feel about it? How do you interact with this problem? She's able to go, yeah, I guess I wasn't really being myself, or I get, all these things that is going to just make her such like, she's such a successful human. I'll just say that. Like, she's barely 19, but she is succeeding. What does that little girl say in the meme? You're winning at life. I like to say that all the time, because I think those are the valuable things. It doesn't matter, like, all the other things in life are going to come to you, but those are the valuable things. And if we can be honest with ourselves and with each other, and it's from a place of love, it's always going to be successful, however it needs to be successful.
So, Tammy, I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Off my soapbox now.
No, well, and I'm gonna take you off your soapbox. No, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, because you brought up if people are coming at it from a loving place, like, that's where we should all be coming from. However, if we look at those people who are doing it in a manner that doesn't feel as though it's coming from a loving place, those people are still playing a role in our lives. Those people are still triggering us to look at our own junk. They're still playing a role for us to help us come to that place of receiving that gift that Daniel was talking about. How, if they weren't being aggressive with the way that they were talking about things, if they weren't, or our perception of them being aggressive, if they weren't saying things in a manner that's triggering people, people might not look at their stuff. Mm-hmm. They might not look at that other perspective. They might just stay in that safe place where everything seems okay. And they might not have the opportunity to look at what is being said and say, ooh, that doesn't resonate with me. Or, ooh, I have a little bit of that in me and I need to look at that. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that there's going to be people out there that might be saying some nasty stuff, like that's really triggering and really not loving. But those things are just as important for us to look at how we're being triggered because there is still something in that for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the loving things that are coming to us.
And
Daniel, take it
I do
away.
not believe that like I don't think you're playing devil's advocate. I do
Yeah.
like I do agree with that. I guess my thought or point behind that was not that there won't be those people and those people aren't important, but that the goal that we should be attaining is to create that loving space around ourselves and to be able to work with ourselves in a way where that doesn't feel like it's something that, like what Daniel was saying before, that feels like a gift versus feeling like something other than that. But I agree.
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah,
that.
to tie those two thoughts together, it's and I think this is kind of hitting the nail on the head with what the three of us are saying is that there are going to be those people in life that serve as a catalyst for
Mm-hmm.
us, a catalyst for growth. And I fully agree that we need to come from a place of love and being loving and that's this place where we come from, exactly like you're saying, Tammy. And what I would posit is that learning how to deal with triggers is the way that we can be loving towards ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can't control what other people do. And to
Right.
Jen's point, if there's people out there that are, tyrants or whatever and are gonna challenge you, those can be real catalysts for growth to realize, hey, I need to stand up for myself more. I'm really triggered by this person, like making me feel little and insignificant. Well, okay, I believe I'm little and insignificant. I
Mm-hmm.
need to change that. I need to change my belief
Mm-hmm.
that I'm little and insignificant. I need to be loving to myself and realize I'm just as worthy of all the goodness of life as everybody else is.
Mm-hmm.
And so and this is kind of the icing on the cake is that as we as individuals take on that mindset of understanding how can I love myself by learning how to deal with these uncomfortable things, I'm then teaching my daughter how to do it, teaching my son how to do it, teaching the people around me how they can do it because I'm demonstrating it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I continue to demonstrate it for myself, because that's the way I handle stuff, um, I'm also teaching myself, I'm continuing to teach myself, yes, keep doing this because it works.
Yeah.
And it works. And it works.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people are like, gosh, he doesn't seem to get all upset at all these things. Why? Well, because there's a way that you can change how you interact with these different situations in such a way that you see them as a gift and not as uh, a pain point in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I
So,
do think what you were saying, Jen, about some of the bigger catalysts in your life are the ones that really challenge you. I absolutely agree with that. That sometimes when we're feeling comfy or safe,
mhm.
we need kind of a bigger smack in the face.
A little bit, just a little bit sometimes.
But, but then that is how we show ourselves love by not avoiding those things, not avoiding those triggers, but to use that as an opportunity for growth and self improvement and getting to those little aha moments where you're like, wait, this doesn't bother me anymore. Like what you were
Hmm.
saying before.
Yeah.
And there's no safer place for you to be than to be fully comfortable with who you are.
Mm-hmm. That's
Like
real safety, right?
that's the only safe place because and I used to be horribly concerned, frightened, whatever about being in front of people. And I realized it's because I was judging everybody. I thought they were all going to attack me, which was really just me attacking, right? If I think Jen's going to attack me for something that I say, I haven't even given her a chance to do it yet. I've already done that job for her. And you know, the safety
Stop
is
hating
rec
yourself. Sorry. That's okay. That's
yeah,
fine.
right? And it's just interesting that if we can become comfortable with who we are and truly love who we are, then it doesn't matter what's going on in the world around us
Mm-hmm.
because we're being true to ourselves and we're not going to be triggered. You know, we're getting rid of those false limiting negative beliefs that we have about ourselves that is unloving to ourselves and other people, really.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's opening up space too, then there's people who are drawn to you at whatever level you're at, and opening up space for some of the most beautiful relationships that can come into your life after you've reached that level of self-acceptance, and um
And
also
it gives other
allowing
people
the
permission to do it too. You
yeah,
know, and like
yeah.
if I'm authentic, it gives you permission to be authentic. It gives
Mm-hmm.
Jen permission to be authentic. If I don't mind, you know, someone seeing me for who I am, it opens up the door for other people to say, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
he's just himself and he's okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that too. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be someone I'm not. I don't have to, you know, pretend I'm for this cause or against that cause. I can just be myself. I can
Mm-hmm.
rise above all these causes and realize that they don't need my attention at all. I'm just worried about me. I'm worried about how I feel, and I act accordingly.
I feel like that's the catalyst for the healing of the world, though, really. I mean, I know that sounds like a big statement, but we're all connected. And
Mhm.
the more that we reach these levels of peace and love and acceptance, the more that ripples through everything. We can all be like Keanu Reeves. My husband thinks Keanu Reeves is like the best like example of someone he really wants to be, like super kind, chill, like Zen guy or whatever. So that's our thing. I'm like, honey, were you Keanu Reeves today? Or if he's feeling really anxious, or like what you were saying, telling himself stories about what's going to happen before it actually happens, and doing a good job of beating himself up. Like, have you been Keanu Reeves today, honey?
On that note, I think that this is a good place to ask. Daniel, do you have any last words that you would like to share with our listeners before we end our podcast for the day?
I have a feeling this is going to be a two-parter, so we'll probably split this one up.
Yeah, probably.
That's okay though. That's good.
You know, I would say, and this is probably more of a discussion than just a final comment, is
Yeah.
the need for people to learn how to control their own minds.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to think that we go through school and we learn about, I don't know, geometry and biology and, you know, English, maths, social studies, all these different things, right? But two of the things that you don't learn in school is how does the financial system work
Mm.
Mhm.
and how do our own minds work? You know, how does my emotional guidance system work? Like they don't teach that. So I would highly suggest people consider if they're feeling so called to say like, you know, do I actually have control over my mind or does my mind have control over me?
Mhm.
And for me, I've used A Course in Miracles, and I don't think at all that's for everyone. I think everybody's got their own path to awakening to who they really are. But I would encourage people to check out some of the different things that are out there. It's interesting to me from my vantage point, seeing how so many different people that are out there are teaching kind of the same content in very different ways and
Mm-hmm.
reaching a lot of different people. Whether that's someone like Joe Rogan or someone like, you know, uh, Jordan Peterson or Sam Harris or, um, all these different people. It's all kind of the same content, but in different forms. And whether you want to look up A Course in Miracles, whether you want to check out the work by Byron Katie, I mean that's something that I've used as well. If you wanted to go to um, the Xina Allen website and check out Breaking Free, we're putting together some material there that might be available in like an online course eventually. There's a lot of things out there that are tools to use to help you gain a better understanding of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There was that ancient uh, phrase or whatever, know thyself. Well, that's kind of the name of the game, right? Because we don't know who we are. We come into this world, we don't know anything. I mean, we're incapable of taking care of ourselves for the first 5 years of life, minimum. And and so we
Some
have
of
a
us, it's 42.
maybe that's the case. So, I guess in another 10 years, Jen, you'll figure it out. Um, that's a compliment saying you're 32, by the way.
I
Uh,
understood.
but I guess the takeaway that I wanted to kind of leave people with is the idea that there's lots of different resources out there. There's lots of different ways that people can get involved and kind of take the steering wheel of their own ship and
Mm-hmm.
start living the life that they want to live and not letting life happen to them, not the being tossed left and right in the ocean of their own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
that you can actually be the one that navigates the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be the one that controls what happens in your life in a very, very real and tangible way.
You can be the
So
one that controls the waves, even.
right? I mean, right? I mean, that's kind of the truth of the matter. We're
Yeah.
we're all creators here. We're
Mm-hmm.
all creating our world that we experience every day with every thought that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you fully want to take on the idea that you are a creator, because you're either a creator or a victim, right? You're one or the other. You can't be both. You can't say, well, I'm a victim today, but I created this. No, like either you created everything or you're creating nothing. There really is no in between. And that's probably super triggering for people to hear. And with it though comes responsibility, which I think people kind of shy away from responsibility in some respects. And I know I've been guilty of that in the past, and it's something that I continue to work on and being a responsible dad, doing the right parenting things when it's not easy. Those aren't easy things for me to do. So I know I have room for growth. I know I have things that I need to do better at. But I think it's important for people to realize that you are truly creating your entire experience. And if that's the case, even if a tiny part of you believes that's the case, you would be a fool not to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm. I think that that would bring up a little bit of a challenge to give to the listeners too. Is Jen and I were talking about this the other day. Sometimes it's really easy for us to identify what we don't want, but
Mhm.
it's really hard for us to identify what we do want. And the challenge is, if there was none of those little voices in your head that tell you what's possible and what's real and what is within your grasp, if you really didn't have to worry about what anybody thought about your choices, what would you want? Like, what do you really, really want? Not, oh, I want this, but I can only have this. What do you want? Your biggest, largest dreams. and start putting that at the forefront of your mind throughout the day and see how you feel and see what happens when these triggers come up. If all of a sudden this trigger now feels a little bit different, like there's maybe something underneath it that you're like, oh, well, I really want this thing, but this thing makes me feel this way. I bet that has something to do with why this thing that I want, that I really want, is not in my reality right now.
And I would challenge people on that is to I would say consider first, what do you want to feel? How do you want to feel?
Mm.
Like, how do you want to feel? Like, there's there's this idea that, it's so great to be in America that we've got all this stuff. But if you look on the happiness scale, we're really not at the top of the chart for countries around the world. And people go to these other countries and they're like, oh my gosh, they live in such poverty. But it's like, I see kids running and playing and super happy, like not a care in the world. It's like, who are we kidding ourselves here? So the question is, how do we really want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we get there? Because it's kind of like the form is secondary. Well, oh, I want a car. Why do you want a car? Well, I want to feel popular. I want to feel like I've got a good ride. I feel like I want to have a safe way to transport. I want to feel the freedom of being able to leave my house at any time. It's like, what are you really wanting behind
Mm-hmm.
what it is that you think you want?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
probably a different episode, though.
That's a lot of stuff for everybody to think about. Y'all, you have some homework. Sorry, we're leaving you with some homework today. So I just want to say thank you to Daniel for coming on and having this conversation with us. I know there's so much more that we could talk about. And Tammy, thank you for helping with this conversation too and adding the little tidbits that you were adding because you always give a different perspective for me to think about too. So this conversation was awesome for me. Yes.
I just want to say thank you both for having me on. I really appreciate it. You guys really are putting out really good work,
Thank
and
you.
I think it's one of those things where you push like a little snowball down the hill and it kind of rolls, and then all of a sudden it starts getting
Mm-hmm.
bigger and bigger. And I really see this what you guys put out as a very valuable resource for people if they tune in. So
Thank
I
you. I
appreciate the
appreciate
opportunity
that.
to be on here.
I was even
Thank you.
reflecting on how it's changed me over the past year that we've been doing it. So, yeah, we love having these conversations, but thank you for being willing to come talk to us. And
Thank you.
it's good for people to recognize too that you don't need to have a specific like business or whatever that you want to talk about, because I know Daniel didn't really even talk that much about that stuff. It was just something you were really interested in, so I appreciate that you're willing to do that and put yourself out there like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
I super duper enjoy these conversations. So
Yes.
Me
if you guys ever
too.
want me back again, let me know.
Yes. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening today. We're super excited. We will see you guys next week.
Bye everyone. If you want more woo, please feel free to check the links in the description. Of course, we love hearing from you, so keep letting us know all of your lovely ideas. Have a beautiful day, our wonderful woo mates.